Hello, everybody. Grant Hunter here with another Product Growth Leaders topic of the week. You know what, Steve? We often are the ones figuring out what topics to come up with and what to put in here. And we're doing a participant request. I was trying to go like a long distance dedication, but it wasn't really a long distance dedication. It was a request from Corey. Hi, Corey. Uh,
Long
for
time,
a,
first time caller.
Yeah. To talk about innovation in products. And Corey actually came up with the question we started with. So we'll get there in a second. But we got a great panel today. Obviously, my partner, Steve Johnson, and regular panelist, Corey Bryan, regular panelist, Glenn Pride, and May Wong, and returning former regular panelist, Paul Hatala. Paul, it's been great having all your comments in the community. And it's so good to have you back on the call. Welcome back. And you guys ready to talk about innovation in products? I guess I should put that up. Innovation in products? All right. On Monday, we put the question in the community. What is the most innovative or exceptional way to grow a product that you have personally experienced? And you can tell just by the wording of this that I didn't write it. It was Corey. And John Cottrell, a longtime friend
Why
of
are you making that point? Is it because it's so clearly written or
Yes, exactly.
okay? Wow. Nice little personal shot.
Self-deprecating humor is a key sign of emotional intelligence, right?
Indeed.
That's what I keep telling myself. So the first person to answer the question was actually our friend John Cottrell, longtime friend of Steve and mine, former pragmatic instructor. He said, I think we can all isolate one-off experiences of innovation which disrupted markets and changed market dynamics. But he said, the big thing that, he talked about Amazon, the consumer markets, and Prime. But in a B2B world, he said moving from perpetual licensing to software as a subscription was a huge example of a big change that was happening. And I wanted to start with that one purely because I want to put this question to you, Steve. Is there a bigger disruption or innovation in B2B software in the past couple decades than subscriptions?
Well, if you say a couple of decades, we're at that point talking about adoption of broadband and adoption of the internet. So both of those things predated SaaS, and yet you're right. SaaS has been a big change, and there was a case study about Adobe and the incredible gamble they made going from one-time purchase to subscription, and they were kind of terrified at the change. Lots of second guessing apparently from Wall Street and so forth, but it's been huge for them, a big success for them. And I think, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I was going to go off into another rant. I'll save that for later.
So I guess that's an interesting question, though. If we take it back 25 years, say, and we get to 1997, when the World Wide Web and internet really became, and Web 1.0, you could argue shifting from on-premise to web delivery could be, and those are two parts of the same part. You can't have subscriptions is a lot harder to do if you're not on doing a cloud-based delivery.
Yeah. Well, I think you actually want to separate that out. I think what you're really talking about is not so much SaaS one way or another as much as renting.
Yeah.
With Adobe, you rent the products, but you actually download them, right? So they're on premise, as opposed to, say, iCloud or Office, that you can use a less capable web tool, or you can, for $5 a month, you can use the web tool, or for $12.50 a month, you can download the on-prem products. But the issue's more around renting software. And,
Yeah.
now we're used to, I have a massive collection of music that I've ripped off of my CDs over the years. And now that I have all the music everywhere in the world available through Spotify, why do I need to own music anymore?
Yeah.
That's the big mental shift that actually took me a long time, because you can't really see it here, but I've got a record player over there with an album on it right now. a record made out of record.
What's that?
Yeah, it's like a playlist, except it's on vinyl instead of on your iPhone.
Well, I mean, hell, that would be an interesting conversation just to take innovation through the years of music, right? In going from, reel to reel to 8 track to cassette or an LP and that type of stuff. But we're not going to go down there. I would like actually to get some of our panelists on just this B2B shift in, sort of SaaS rental. I mean, a big shift it also had was in how we buy it. It went from a capital purchase to an operating expense by making it subscription based. Corey, I want to get each person in on this. In a world, I mean, is in B2B, is subscription placement, is that the biggest change you saw?
I don't think so. I mean, the subscriptions have been around for a very long time. The concept of the people have been using them forever. People haven't been using them in software for that long. And that's, I mean, so you're taking old ideas and you're applying them in unique concepts. And sometimes that works. Like the journaling app that I use has a subscription to it. There's lots of other things that I use that have subscriptions to them. Places where subscriptions don't make sense is where you're seeing some of the interesting problems occurring. Take John Deere, for example. Yep. People buy tractors and suddenly the farmers can't fix the tractors anymore because John Deere owns the software that goes into those tractors. So the right to repair, we've seen that with Apple products. We've seen that with a lot of things. You may spend $800 on a new iPhone, but you can't fix it because it's not really yours.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting concept. If I didn't buy it, then how come I can't fix it? If I can't fix it and I'm renting it, concept of a subscription, then why did I outlay $800 for this thing? It doesn't make sense. So there's an interesting, where subscription
push and pull
absolutely makes sense, and places where it absolutely does not make sense.
I get that, and it's true. I was doing subscription services 20 some years ago before anybody called anything SaaS. It was just content. People bought access to content for a year. We used to deliver it in DVD or CD-ROM, and then the web let us shift it to that. What you just said made me think of, Peter Drucker in his book Innovation Entrepreneurship. Steve, I had to get a Peter Drucker reference, and you know this. At the time, he said the biggest impact from innovation economically was nothing that was really technology. It was credit, trade. Giving people credit to buy stuff was an innovation. It's so sometimes innovations aren't new technology inventions. They're new products or things that create transmute value is his officially words, but create new value that wasn't available.
And interesting in this discussion, we haven't mentioned one feature.
Right. Well, I want to mention one feature though, because I think the other case study that I found really interesting is what made Uber so successful back in the early days. And there are several case studies done about, was it the fact that it just wasn't a taxi? Was it the fact that it was cleaner? Was it the fact that it was something else? One of the key drivers that one of those studies I read was the easy ability to pay was something that was highly underrated as why people started adopting it as much as they did, because that process, which is you get to the place, you pay, you have to get change, you have to deal with the guy, all that stuff went away because of the simple thing that Uber did, which was make it easier to do that. That was probably the bigger innovation in that product idea.
And, to that point, I remember like when I particularly, it doesn't matter. On trips, I would get into a cab and say, listen, I've only got a credit card. And he's like, to the dispatcher, and they make sure I would get a cab that took credit cards. And then we get there and he's like, seriously, you don't have $75 on you? And I'm like, no. And, and then he's like, so annoyed with me for not using cash. And I finally asked somebody once, and he said, the problem is if you pay cash, I get my tips today. Yep. If you pay with a credit card, I get my tips in a month.
And the interesting thing is, to Corey's point, I remember when they started rolling out mandatory credit cards in New York City cabs, and there were a lot of cabs that were really hesitant to it, but, it made it so much easier, and that's what we would want. It would be a requirement for me. Paul, I want to still get around to the rest of the panelists on this subscriptions, right? Even if Corey may have shot a hole in that, hypothesis. What are in B2B software or online delivery, whatever you want to call it, do you think that subscriptions, or broader than that, are subscriptions one of the most major innovations in the past 20 years? I even added most major, not the major. So
It's certainly it depends, like every
oh my
answer.
God, come
So
on.
because I think about the people, there's a tendency for someone to be successful in it, and then someone takes the model and tries to shoehorn it into something else.
Yep.
So I remember the first time Microsoft decided, hey, you have this Office package that you have at home. We're going to start adding features to Excel that you're not going to be able to get in your downloaded version. We're only going to do this special type of chart that you now currently want to use in the 365 version. And to me, that it was like artificially creating value for a product that I didn't choose to buy, which pissed me off. So in that case, it made me start thinking, okay, who has a better model for how I want to do business instead of is trying to lure me into how they want to do business. And
Yeah.
so in that case, it's probably fantastic for them. They're probably making money hand over fist, and I'm slowly trying to think how to get out of their ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I mean, congratulations to them. They hit their quarterly number, and I no longer want to be a customer.
It's interesting how that happens. Sometimes decisions are made for the company first and the value for the company, not thinking about
Yes.
the long-term impact of the customer. I love that. Glenn, your take. I mean, you've been in a B2B world for a long time, subscriptions or something else.
I think the ability to share data via like an API or something like that, where I don't have to build something for someone. I can serve that data up to them and they can link in and build whatever they want around it.
So
And
building a whole product by integrating with best of breed applications and allowing to move data to and from. Well, if we offer that as a subscription, does that mean I'm right?
sure, today you're right.
No, and actually, if I was going to put an answer in here before we had this conversation, it was going to be integrating content into workflow, right? And making content not static but dynamic, and the ability to do that type of stuff as something that I saw that I did, because the really question was, something you've been part of, and that was something I was part of. May, what about yourself?
Oh, where do I even start with this one? So one of my previous companies, it's a very mature on-prem
Technology company.
software, fintech, yep.
Yeah.
And so in order to basically primarily sold to large financial institutions, and the market was changing, right? And everyone's like, well, again, going back to the whole operational versus capital costs, actually capital costs is actually a lot easier to access in certain industries.
Yep.
So for us, like moving to SaaS was just like, if we become an operational cost, this is a problem. And we're not sure we want to do that. Also, on top of that, like it gives us access to smaller markets. We can, with a SaaS model, you can control the amount of customizations as well. So like the company kind of like diverged into the on-premise, you can do whatever you want with this thing platform. And then the much more controlled SaaS model that's easily reproducible, and then from there you kind of like the company evolved into a much more production operations oriented way of operating. So
Yep.
like just we had some amazing people on the production ops team, and like that's where I learned a lot about how to do operations well, right? So it's really interesting to see that transition being enabled by like accounting.
Yeah.
A way of packaging and whatnot.
And it is amazing, but the counting on the vendor side as well. There are many times I've been talking with startups as a bigger company wanting to sell a product to my art, saying, hey, can I do this as a subscription? Because we sold subscriptions, not upfront costs. And it's like, no, our whole ramp model is based on upfront, a big upfront license, and it's changed the dynamics and the economics of a startup, because you used to sell software with a big license and then 20% maintenance fees. And
Yeah.
now the cash flow shifts and blends out. It's sometimes a little tougher.
Yeah, so the way we got around that is we sold a 5-year term subscription.
Mhm.
So it's basically the same thing, but like accounting gets in and they start yelling at you, like, what are you doing? Can't do this. Anyways,
Booked
sorry, I
versus
digress.
earned, and you could booked versus earned, and you can draw on the booked or whatever, and get loans against it.
Yeah.
I get that. It's interesting how much of this is innovation is impacted by accounting and how you sell it and that type of stuff. Paul Hatala, you said there are already several variations of simply changing how people buy, which this subscription thing is sort of part of that. Even Corey's example from Uber, right? Make it easier to pay somebody. And that can be low hanging fruit. Make it easy for a buyer to say yes. Do you have specific things you've done?
Not in the software space, because I live in the real world, but
Tangible products that are actually you can touch.
But I on several occasions, and part of the reason why I've chosen the role I'm in now is I'm very comfortable with when someone has a good product, but people just say, but I can't either, I can't afford it or I can't whatever, is to be able to figure out risk mitigation, what they see as their push and pull when their long-term forecasting. And if you can make it easy for the person that's buying it, the person that's using it, and by using, I mean, an entire chain, it might be if it's a manufacturing operation, how they schedule their factory, if it's how someone plans a project, if it's capital equipment. So it's been a couple of times of just getting in and understanding where are those couple of friction points that maybe we've not even looked at and our competitors haven't really addressed very well yet because they haven't had to, and just answer a different question other than just the product.
You use the term that Steve loves to use, as in friction,
Mhm.
right? And especially in a value chain, and whether that is the sales process, there's a ton of value chains upstream and downstream. Finding a friction is really finding an unmet or undermet need, or a constraint that's holding up productivity. And what a great way to unlock value is to address something like that, because you may have this constraint based thing where if you can solve that constraint, it's not just an incremental value you're creating, it's exponential, because I'm thinking of the goal in the Phoenix Project type as constraint based theories. uh, Awesome. Corey, you talked about a GDPR thing you guys did innovation wise, getting access data. Talk to me about your experience.
Yeah, it's one of the ideas that I like is coming up with creative ways to solve problems. I can't solve them myself, especially not as a product person who doesn't code. But I like finding different ways to think, just like the subscription, we were talking about that. Let's find an old way or a way that people are comfortable with and apply that in a new format and see if it works, see if it does something that people can get on board with. And that was the problem we were facing at one of the companies I was with. GDPR was coming online. Everybody was freaking the hell out about it because we got all this data now. What do we do? In our case, the product was about collecting information on analysts for markets to sell. So if you want to know who the best, person in China to buy silver from, you kind of need to know that information. And we had that. The person in China didn't know that particularly. So we had to let them know that we had that and what to do about it. So the idea was, how do we do that for these 100,000 people? And I was standing in Target one night and I looked at the gift cards. I said, well, here's value that's sitting on the shelf. It's freely available to anybody, but it's not active until one person buys it. And I talked with the team and I talked with the other product people on our product line and said, is there something there that we could use? The concept, at least, that we could try to see if that would work. And they tried it out in about 3 days and they came back and said, look, here's what we can do. And they actually built a
gift card,
a very simple version of that. Yeah, an online gift card. They built that and sent it to me in an email. I logged in, I tried it. I said, you know what, this kind of works. What else do we need to do? And then we got the legal people involved and the GDPR.
And then it got shut down.
Well, no, we did it. They had their own tool. That was the funny thing. They had their own tool that they had gone through this very lengthy process to buy. And we looked at it and it sucked. And it sucked for a lot of different
Are we allowed to say that word? No, of course we are.
No, it was good. It actually worked, and we got the information we needed.
It's interesting because you just made me think of a typical similar situation when I was a market research analyst at a big EDI company. We had a lot of retailers, and this is the Y2K lead up. And somebody's like, "We've got a problem. All of our EDI things may shut down if one supplier is not Y2K compliant, and it could like one weak point can take out the whole system, like an O-ring on the Challenger, right?" And they're like, "How do we solve this?" I'm like, I went around and talked to a whole bunch of experts as a product person, enabling people to think about the problem, and we came up with a simple solution. Is like, we're going to run a campaign just like we would do to onboard people to test everybody. It's like, you have to send us a trial transaction using year 2000 dates in it, and we'll see what happens. And it was a simple solution to do stuff we do every day, but we were able to make some changes to make it's amazing when you can do that. When we made a decent amount of money selling that as a service, right, to make sure it worked. But I thank you for bringing that memory back. I gotta maybe document that as my innovation history. May, you talked about, if you have the luxury or punishment of building a product from scratch, make sure your messaging is completely aligned. Is this to help people understand the innovation you're giving and set expectations properly? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, so basically, if it's not really terribly innovative, it's more like just making sure everyone knows what you're doing, especially if you're investing quite a bit of effort into building something net new, right?
Yeah.
So that way, when you're ready to launch, it's like everyone knows what you're launching. And it's funny, like right after I posted this, apparently development had asked one of our product leads, like, why are we building the biggest thing that we are building? And so this is actually highly relevant to my day-to-day right now.
We talked about it on a recent call with Product Camp DC, right? I'm coming closer and closer to thinking that strategic positioning and strategy are pretty much the same thing. Because if you think of what April Dunford says as what you need for strategic positioning, it's market of customers who really want what you have, right? Value for a problem you're solving, and what's your differentiation, why you. And those are three of the critical key things that go into a strategy canvas, a la Roger Martin. So yes, having that up front, especially for something innovative, to give that context of what we're trying to solve, I think that makes a ton of sense. It helps you be more innovative and get more successful at that.
Yeah.
Glenn, how about you? What is an exceptional or innovative way that you've been part of growing a product that you've personally experienced? I mean, you've been engaged in in the digitization and healthcare and some of the stuff there. You've been engaged in the digitization of the retail supply chain and CPG supply chain. Some pretty impressive things that have happened. Anything stand out?
I think that back in the day, we had a big merger, and I think one of the things is it was going to impact everybody. And I just think the idea of breaking them down into segments and treating each segment differently according to their needs created a lot of success. Was it innovative? No, it was just common sense to offer them different channels to.
I'm gonna pull back up here. It's not just innovative or an exceptional way, and I would say doing really good segmentation and understanding the needs and segmenting how you do a solution or product based on those needs is a pretty exceptional. I wish it wasn't exceptional, right? I wish everybody did it, but the reality is it is exceptional. It is an exception to the case because most people don't do that. So I think that's exceptional for me.
I was just reminded of an even better answer.
Then Glenn's or than yours?
Mine.
Okay.
So we once built a new product and we're like, how do we get adoption? Because like we had an old product we're trying to deprecate. And we're like, what if we could make money off of killing the old product? I think that That's an innovative way to grow a product for sure.
Put out a
So
hit on
we
it?
charge people for the migration.
It was a pet store.
It was not a
Yeah.
pet store, but basically, yeah, we charge people for the migration, and we made a lot of money.
You have to migrate, and you're going to have to pay us to migrate. So that's not
Exactly.
customer value being created; it's business value that's being
Yeah,
created.
well, that's innovation, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh,
Steve, any last thoughts on innovative ways and innovative and exceptional ways to grow the product? You're on mute.
I'm just interested in how many of these were not technology, but packaging or pricing. And I guess whenever anybody talks to me about innovation, I go back to Clay Christensen, who says, always start with the problem.
Yep.
And the first packaging story I ever encountered personally was my first computer. This is a long time ago. My first computer, I wanted to get Lotus 1-2-3, and I wanted Word Perfect, and I wanted like a big hard drive, like 16 megabytes, maybe, massive thing. And my IT department came in and said, we want you to buy this new thing from Microsoft called Multiplan, which became Excel. And they had basically solved IT's problem. IT didn't want to have contracts with these little vendors. They were already having contracts with Microsoft for the DOS. And so the fact that we already have a license for DOS, we can get a license for Office, made IT's job so much easier. And
that goes back to Paul's original thought about making it easy for people to buy. Can be some of the best innovation.
Yeah.
And Corey put the question in the chat, Steve. I have to ask, did that computer have a vacuum tube?
No, it was still steam powered.
Okay.
Yeah. We had not gotten to the tube state yet.
I just imagine Steve on a sandy shore with little sticks that represent 1 and little shells that represent zeros, and he's having to do the binary.
Well, the professor on Gilligan's Island was really good at that. And in some weird trivia, the actor's name was Russell Johnson, which was my brother's name as well. So I think you've just portrayed me as either Professor or Gilligan on Gilligan's Island. Thank you.
Or a combination of the two.
I wonder what the storage size would have been on the beach.
Yeah, not that big. Not that big. A couple bit megapixels.
Bytes, I would think.
Yeah. All right. On Wednesday, we put a poll in the community, and we got like a ton of answers. One of the biggest answers we've got. And the question we asked is, what is the most common thing that stifles innovation in products? Corey, I hope this was a good poll question. Yeah, I didn't ask you for your support.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
The options were corporate inertia, risk avoidance, individual hesitancy, short-term focus, or our always other it depends. And it became a neck and neck race with corporate inertia and short-term focus. Corporate inertia, 36%, short-term focus, 32%. Steve, did you vote?
I did indeed. And I voted for short-term focus.
All right. I voted for corporate inertia. So I guess we got a mano-y-mano going here.
Indeed. But, my sense there is that I think the key to innovation is having a dedicated team that isn't busy with our current products.
Yeah.
Operations and management and nonsense related to the products we have now prevents you from having any mind share left to work on something truly innovative.
And it's interesting because part of that was I saw that as corporate inertia, is that we're so focused going in this direction. And I guess there's some alignment between corporate inertia and short-term focus because they sort of perpetuate, if that's the right word.
That's the wisdom of the three horizons.
Yeah.
I think that so many companies are so immersed in Horizon 1, the products they have now, that when something like COVID happens, they're like, well, what do? We don't have any other plans.
Yeah.
Just to do more of what we have been doing.
Yeah. And that's why in our product strategy stuff, we tell people you should always have 2 or 3 things. One, the current thing, but whether it's Three Horizons, what's the next? You know, what else you're working on to start your next curve, right?
Absolutely.
Unless you're in rapid growth, established at being the clear leader, you should always have something that's the next, right? The next market, the next product that you're working on, and you can get around to that. Paul, you said if you are passionate about solving market problems, then these are just obstacles to work around. If you lack the outside market view, then not much can help you. So I'm assuming you were an other it depends vote?
Initially, I was convinced from Corey's response to rethink this, and came back with a causality string that runs through all of the other answers.
Care to share that with us?
I don't remember exactly how I wrote it, but just looking at the chart there, basically the short-term focus leads to the individual hesitancy to be risk avoidant and to therefore
become inertia.
Because you're always just looking at N+1. Like if I'm going to be judged on this quarter, I'm not shooting for N+5 because I could lose out on the next 2 or 3 quarters. But if I go N+1, I'm going to show incremental growth and I'm done.
Well, you've done a better job of rolling all the answers together to make sure you have the winning answer than I've ever done, and I do that all the time. But it is
just
true.
read them backwards. That makes it easy.
Yes, it does.
It was like the unified theory.
It is. You know, when I used to teach in the MBA program at Rutgers, and like people are like, "Well, what's market research?" I'm like, any term like that, flip it, right? Do it in reverse. It's research of the market, right? What's product management? It's management of the product, right? It's pretty simple. But I think that theory works here for that, as they all can come together. You mentioned Corey. Corey, you said you're going to go with an inertia, but you know, you had a lot of thought in that. Obviously, that got, you know, Paul thinking of this unified theory. Talk to me about where your head is.
So I admit that I had no idea what corporate inertia meant. I thought I knew what it meant, but I said, I've never heard that phrase before. It makes sense in my head, but let me go look it up. So I looked it up, and the definition I found was a term used to describe an established company that remains rigid in its thinking and actions rather than being open to changing industry and company dynamics. And I thought, yes, that's it. There may be, as you were saying, there may be several other threads that run through that, but at the base problem, if you fix that, I think you can fix the other things. But if you fix the other things like individual hesitancy or something else, but the corporate inertia is still in that direction of we have to do this. It's that short-term thinking model. All the other stuff I think is we're locked into this mode of thinking and we can't get out of it. And because we can't get out of it, we're not going to allow any innovation that would disrupt the product that we've already got to something that might be better 2-5 years down the road.
And, you know, I'm thinking back to our conversations on bad product management, actually a couple other ones where a lot of times it comes down to culture. And I think you could have put culture in place of inertia. I just have worked at really big companies that are now falling because of corporate inertia.
And they don't have to be big companies either.
Yeah, true.
And I don't know if it's inertia or short-term focus. I mean, I was talking to somebody recently about their problems with tech debt, and that's another area of short-term focus. The sales guys say, I can't sell any more products if you clean up the code. Well, yeah, but at some point we won't be able to add functionality. And he's like, well, that's not my problem. I won't be here 6 months from now. You know, I'm going to close these deals and bail. So that it's the old story we talk about in class of, you know, I want to sell the house. I want to replace the carpet, but the roof leaks. I really got to fix the roof before I replace the carpet, or else the carpet's going to be ruined anyway.
Yeah.
That may be the next guy's problem, which is very short term and perhaps illegal.
I get that. Corey, you voted for inertia, right?
I did, yes.
Okay. I'm just making sure I didn't ask that question. I assumed it, and you know what assume spells, right? Glenn, you said people are afraid that they will fail or punished for failure. At least that has been your experience in larger corporations. Was the vote individual hesitancy? Was the vote risk avoidance? Was it a joy, all of the above? So you did other?
Um, it is all of the above.
But which did you vote for?
I did vote for the risk avoidance,
Okay.
uh, only because, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
Being a group response to stuff that have been mentioned before. And it's like, that's a cultural thing. And then I like, oh, well, that's corporate inertia, but I already had clicked the button and
So you're aligned with this. Maybe we're aligning all the votes with Paul's unified theory.
I really think it's a unified, they're all facets of the same point of view that don't upset the apple cart.
Is it just me, or are we like each week coming up with some big thing like a theory? I think last week we had one with Shibnan had something that she said that we all got behind. Paul, you are in line to win the week, whatever that means. May, how did you vote?
My gut feeling was short-term focus. However, having an experience with a certain inundating bureaucracy machine, I could not help myself but click on the corporate inertia button. And the more I thought about it,
her fingers she's like holding, no.
The more I thought about it, it actually is corporate inertia. And the reason why I say that is risk avoidance is really a lot more about executive buy-in, but short-term focus is what we end up happening, but that can be fixed. However, you can put a lot of work into changing the way everyone works. But the biggest problem really, in my opinion, is corporate inertia, because if you think about everything you need to do to launch a new product, even if you have a group dedicated to innovation, right? What happens when that work is done? Who owns that work going forward? If you have a group labeled innovation, all they want to do is continue to innovate and nobody owns this orphan, right? Yeah. And then with this orphan, you got to somehow manage to work it into your set processes with your set people, and you're probably not going to grow until it becomes successful. On top of that, you've got to train and adapt all of your other systems to incorporate this new thing. Just the sheer amount of work to launch a new thing, which is basically what I did at that certain company. It's a lot of work, and it's not even just a lot of work, it's a lot of buy-in. How do you get the salespeople to focus on selling this one new big thing that's going to make a lot of money? Well, they don't know it. It's not safe. They've never sold it before. They're not going to sell it, right? And then marketing focus, support focus, services focus, upsells, customer success focus. There's a lot of corporate inertia to overcome in order to do a new thing. And unless if you have a dedicated organization, not even just to build it, but also to go to market with it, it's almost impossible.
No, I completely agree. But it also goes back to the answer from your Monday question, your answer from our Monday question, which is if you don't have the story in place of why we're doing this, all those points of friction you talked about are things that, if you do it properly, can go there. Corey put in the chat, there's a spicy topic: groups dedicated to innovation. There is a monthly or so call I get on with these really smart consultants that are former Booz consultants when Booz was a strategy firm, strategy, and I guess it got changed to. And they were talking about strategy and innovation, and I'm like, I was talking about it from a product management, product management and innovation. I'm like, that should be product management's key job, right? That's what we do. But there are these strategy people who are living up here, which made me think about Corey's thing about these dedicated innovation groups. It's product management, right?
Well, the thing that I keep hearing from that, and the thing that doesn't make sense when you phrase it this way, is those teams over there, we want to be innovative. These teams over here, we don't want you to innovate at all. Your job is not to innovate. Your job is to do what we tell you, or to keep the lights on. Everybody, this team, this small group of focus team, is to be innovative. Who wants to work for which team now?
Yeah.
Corey, But that's the whole purpose behind the centers of excellence.
Ah, yes. Again, you people over here be innovative. Other people over here don't.
Or you can't be innovative without these center of excellence people on your team. Right?
Yes.
Oh, I need to get the center of excellence such innovation team or design thinking team or
Versus
build
as a
those skills.
company, as a company of teams or as a group of teams, you're all trying to be innovative. We all need to come up with new ideas, please. And I've worked in other places where nobody's allowed to be innovative.
Well, that goes back to corporate inertia.
Yes.
And companies that are very low risk, which ends up being very high risk because then you lose everything you had. Actually, Corey, that was a
One more note before you move to the next topic. I was looking for it. I have a report somewhere on in my computer that I can't find. Executives were asked how important is innovation for your future, and something like 87% said it was critical. And they said, how would you rate your company's ability to innovate? And it was less than 10%. And,
I've seen that survey.
and it's like, to Corey's point, shouldn't everybody be innovating? I mean, shouldn't everybody be looking at how to improve inside the box, but also looking at how to improve outside the box?
Maybe not your accountants.
Well, I guess that's true.
I just had my taxes done and he did a fabulous job of thinking of things. So
Of innovating.
Well, what you see now more than ever, and I've worked in places where this was true, but you see it a lot, which is big companies don't innovate. They buy small companies who have innovated. So
Yes.
they're not interested and can't because of their inertia or their risk or whatever you want to, their culture. They can't bear the cost of innovation, but they will spend the money to buy something that has innovative and then most of the time kill it.
Overpay for it.
And certainly overpay for it. I mean, we could
Yes.
have done this innovation internally for $1 million, but instead we're going to buy this thing for $1 billion.
Yes. And I'm going to move to the next question, which is going to be our only question because we've been talking so much. I would be remiss if I did not mention what May said in the chat, that this was the best survey or poll ever. So
I love the options. All of them were great.
I'm going to give you a Calvin Hart, and we're going to move to our question, which is, and it goes back to what Corey was talking about. As a product leader, what can you do to help support more innovation? Right? What can we be doing as product leaders to help support that, to enable it? We want everybody to be, Corey. What can we be doing as product leaders?
For me, two things. For the company and the team is make it obvious why we're doing this. Talk about the benefits for the customers, for the products we're building. I want to come back to that. Make it easy for them to do the thing that they want to do anyway.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. It's not lightning round, so you don't have to be that short, but I'm okay if you...
I'll come back to it if something else.
All right. Paul, what do you think?
yeah, sort of the flip side of that coin is to continue looking at not just the benefits of what you're doing, but what the core problem is that the customers are facing, so that people aren't framing it from an internal view of here's how we're solving this, but what is there to be solved, so that if you're looking at it and saying that, well, we're kind of coming at it this way instead of just going right at the core issue, which is really this. There's a organization I worked at one point that wanted to replace the way that people were testing electrical connections. They're like, we're gonna automate how they do the IR scanning of connections to see if they're heating up. And I pointed out that we're already measuring all the electrical power going through there. Why can't we just look at how much is being lost at that point and just send it to them electrically or through data to say that, hey, by the way, you're getting increasing losses here, not wait for a couple of months for someone to go scan the temperature.
Yeah.
That the core problem wasn't how they were doing it. It was something completely different.
Getting back to that core problem is very key. May.
So we're currently going through a road mapping exercise, and it's been really interesting to see how this panned out. But one of the things we talked about is what do we want? We're extending our roadmap by 6 months. Um, and we're thinking about what does it mean? Where do we want to be 6 months to a year from now? What do we want to work towards? And also, like, why is this the most important thing we could possibly be doing at that time? Right. And when you frame it in that light, and we try to get all of our PMs to really think things through in that light, it's more understanding, like, maybe this isn't necessarily innovation, but we are thinking ahead to where we want our products to be within the space that we want to operate in. So I think giving the PMs that leeway to really own that problem space and say you also own the innovation, and to talk about, like, where do you see your product going, not here's the status, let's just kind of figure it out as we go along. Having that vision ahead, I think, is what needs to happen to drive that innovation.
So enable the product managers to aspire to, a vision.
No, they own it.
Own the vision.
Make them
Yeah.
own it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I love
we
that.
own the joint, like the collective portfolio vision, but
Yep.
the product managers need to own that specific product area vision. And I think that's the best way to do it.
I
At
love
least.
that. I'm going to add to that where my head was in this one is as a leader, give them air cover so they can do that type of stuff, right? So too often, a lot of people are all asking them about today things, but you need to encourage them and give them the cover to be thinking about that future. So it's, they own it, but we have to do our part as giving them the cover so people aren't asking, well, why are you doing that? What's going on here, right? And to continually do that.
Yeah, and they give us kind of the they do the work in terms of understanding why, and like selling that idea of why this is the most important thing. And
Yep.
then, like, we as a team go and use that language to promote it elsewhere as well. Like, everyone's responsible for that message.
Yeah, totally. And Corey, you just put in the chat, and I'll sort of now you did finish out your thought on it, right? Encourage experimentation and realize that a lot of things are going to fail, and better to fail with small tests, of validation, that type of stuff, than to fail big in a waterfall way where we take 2 years to build something innovative and nobody buys it.
Yeah, planning for innovation, I think, is wrong. You can't say in 2 years we're going to have an innovative product and it's going to do this.
Yep.
Innovation, maybe 10% of the things you're going to do over the next 2 years are going to be seen as others by your customers as innovative. So
Yep.
there's going to be lots of failures. There's going to be lots of trial and error. You have to do lots of experiments. You have to do a lot of, well, that didn't work. What else can we try? That's where you get to innovation. It's not this is an innovative product, let's go to market with.
Well,
Well, what I'm saying is the journey is the reward, right? And what I'm thinking of is I've heard so many leaders say, we're going to leapfrog the competition, which is total bullshit, because you can't leapfrog the learning that occurred in all the failures that you just talked about. We experimented, we tried this, we tried the other thing. We now know 15 ways this won't work. Hallelujah, we have learned.
Yeah.
And, the companies that are now saying, hey, we think we want to get into the battery car business. And you're like, dude, you're missing about 20 years of invention and innovation and learning that either you can buy one of those companies and inherit the knowledge.
Yeah.
But if you're going to start from scratch, you're starting from ignorance.
Thank you, Mr. Edison.
Indeed.
And what it also made me think about is I would say also encourage, there's continuous innovation, right? You've got a product and you can continually be adding stuff that creates new value. So you can do small innovation, but if you always put it in, anything we do should be adding value to the market, to the customer, to our business, right? And still innovation is about creating new value. It can still be done within our current product. So let's look for those small incremental things, which may help us improve a retention rate or, close holes in the buying process or whatever it may be, as well as understanding where something is in its life cycle, what's happening with technology that can impact it, and go where we need to go with that. Paul just said in the chat, failure and finding boundaries is part of learning a craft. And innovation, is it a craft? Is that what you're saying?
Sort of. I mean, I always go back to the most humbling thing in the world for me is woodworking. And boy, if there wasn't any failure or figuring out why things go wrong, oh my Lord, there wouldn't be anything.
No, I get that. I wish.
And hiding your mistakes. That's a key thing I've learned about it.
I've got some mistakes in woodwork. My wife still hasn't seen after 5 years or 10
There you
years.
go.
I drilled the holes wrong in a cabinet door, and I had to plug it with the colored paste. But
Yeah.
either she's noticed it and not said anything to me, or she's
It depends on how much she likes you, and I don't know that.
it depends on the day. Glenn, before we go to the lightning round, any thoughts on this one?
I think that one thing that I would want to have happen is to have park your ego to the side and let ideation occur across the company. Like even your junior developer who just came on for 2 weeks can have a superstar idea.
So
And
not just the
foster
product
that.
leader put your ego aside, but product management put your ego aside and open up. I love that idea, Glenn. That's a great
Yeah.
way to think about that. All right, it's that time, and we are going to need to be lightning with this one. The question is, what is the key for actually delivering innovation in products? What is the key for actually delivering innovation in products? And I'm going to start with Corey because he's raising his hand.
Solving unmet needs.
Solving unmet needs. Thank you, Mr. Drucker. Uh, and I think Corey realized that by volunteering to go first, he can take the thing everybody else is thinking about. All right. Glenn Pride.
Telling everybody that you can solve their unmet needs.
Telling people, getting the word out. So telling the customers, the market, or telling people internally?
The market. Yeah.
Okay, tell the market. So we're going to solve your needs, but we have to tell them. Almost goes back to positioning that May was talking about. Paul Hatala.
Define the problem differently than everyone else.
Define the problem differently than everybody else. I love that. May.
It's everyone's responsibility.
Oh, come on, dang it.
Hey, I said it first.
It's
right.
tough going last, isn't it, Grant? It's
Every week.
Totally.
Steve.
Well, I'm going to agree and leverage what May just said, but I think it's collaborative. It's the real innovations that I've seen as a product manager is when I take a problem to either marketing or development and say, I've got this issue that I can't figure out how to solve. And they go, oh, well, if we just did this, then people wouldn't call you anymore. And I'm like, that's my ideal scenario.
Thanks, Steve, for taking my follow on. That was going to be my follow on. So we've got solving unmet needs, telling the market, define the problem differently. Everyone is responsible for it. Be collaborative with it. Those are all things, yes. I'm going to go more tactical just because everybody took everything else. And I'm going to say, talk to your customers who are using your product off label. If there's somebody who's using your product who does not look like the market segment or persona you are trying to sell to, go talk to them and find out why, because they're probably an innovator or, an early adopter, people who are doing it themselves, who has a problem that they're solving with your product that is not what you thought. And go talk to those people and find it. And then we got a great, that's a great way. And that goes, and I'll give all that credit to Drucker as well, because that is one of his 7 places to look for innovation, but it's the place where I've had the most success. I think it's easy to do because, you look at people like, hey, one of these things is not like the other. Let's go talk to them. And I've been pretty thunder in this answer. So what a great conversation. I say it every week. And then I say that every week. But, I think that with Corey's assistance, I'm going to start pushing some bigger ideas out there and, have some of these amazing calls. We do this every week. Question goes in on Monday. we got great answers this week. The poll goes in. I think that's the most comments we ever got on a poll. I think made the most votes we ever got on a poll. And we had these amazing conversations on Friday. And I'm thinking about innovation and product management in a whole new way. I'm ready to go back to those strategy guys and give them, shit about the importance of product management and innovation. And just don't talk down to us. And I want to thank everybody for being on this call. Paul Hatala, great to have you back. Glenn Pride, Corey Bryan, May Wong, and my partner, Steve Johnson. Such a great call today. We'll see you guys next week in the community.